One morning in 1908, something exploded over Siberia with such force that it flattened every tree across an area the size of a major city. People were knocked off their feet 100 miles away. The sky glowed even at night, all the way to Western Europe, the largest explosion in modern history. And when scientists finally reached the site, they found no crater, no impact pit, no meteorite, nothing. And what actually happened is far more frightening than a crater. June 30th, 1908, early morning, deep in Siberia, endless, silent taiga with only a few nomadic families and their reindeer. The few eyewitnesses say a bluish glowing streak split the morning sky in the north, almost as bright as the sun, and shrieked across the horizon. Then a blinding flash and the shockwave. People were thrown into the air tens of kilometers away. One old man reported that a hot wind hurled him to the ground, threw him several meters, and scorched his skin, as if the door of an invisible furnace had opened in the sky. Windows shattered hundreds of kilometers away. The shockwave was measured on the other side of the world. It circled the planet twice. And now comes what makes it unbelievable. One of the largest explosions of all time happened at one of the most desolate points on Earth. Russia was shaken by revolutionary chaos, poverty, and war. A distant rumble in the Siberian nowhere, where only trees and a few nomads perished, simply interested no one. So, incredibly, for nearly 20 years, no one went to look. Finally, in 1927, a determined, obsessed scientist named Leonid Kulik put together an expedition. He was convinced he would find an enormous meteorite crater full of valuable oxygenated iron fragments. Under terrible conditions, he cut across the endless swamp and dense taiga, while the local guides, out of superstitious fear, were reluctant to take him to the cursed place. And when he reached the center, he saw something no theory had prepared him for. For kilometers in every direction, flattened trees, 80 million of them, combed outward, knocked in a single direction, as if a giant invisible palm had pressed them down from the center. But the crater he was looking for was nowhere, and here's the most haunting detail. At the exact center of the explosion, the trees weren't lying on the ground. They were standing upright but completely stripped bare, robbed of all their branches and bark. The ghostly, upright skeletons of a silent forest right in the middle of a perfect circle. Kulik didn't understand. A meteorite leaves a crater, debris, iron. Here, nothing. For years, he searched for the point of impact. He never found it, because it never existed. Here's the solution, and it's far more frightening than a crater. The object, probably a 50 to 60 meter stony asteroid, never reached the ground. As it entered the atmosphere at tens of thousands of kilometers per hour, the air compressing in front of it heated it up until, at an altitude of 5 to 10 kilometers still in the air, it literally exploded in a single instant. That's why there's no crater. There was no impact. The destructive force poured down from above, from a single point. That's why it knocked the trees outward in a perfect radiating pattern. And why they stayed standing right at the center, where the shockwave pressed them down not from the side, but from above, vertically. Every strange detail suddenly makes perfect sense. And now, the thought that sends a chill down your spine. This rock didn't aim. It just fell blindly into the earth, at the spot the planet's surface happened to be turning toward, over an empty forest. But the Earth rotates at more than 1,000 kilometers per hour. If the same rock had arrived a few hours later, the same trajectory, the same explosion, it wouldn't have burst over uninhabited taiga. It would have burst over a major city, over a capital, over millions. And this isn't an ancient legend. It happened in 1908 at the dawn of the airplane, the radio, the modern world. If the cosmic timetable had slipped by just a few hours, we wouldn't call it an interesting mystery today. We'd call it the greatest urban catastrophe in history, perhaps with millions of victims. And the most sobering part, according to astronomers, an impact like this doesn't happen once every 1,000 years, but on average every few centuries. Until now, almost always over oceans or uninhabited land, because most of the Earth is water and empty terrain. The statistics have been on our side, but statistics aren't a promise. In 2013, a much smaller sibling exploded over a Russian city, Chelyabinsk, and injured nearly 1,500 people without any warning. We only noticed it once it was already glowing in the sky. An explosion with no crater, a forest knocked down by an invisible hand. and a few hours of blind luck that separated us from an unimaginable tragedy. The question, if the difference between a quiet mystery and a global catastrophe was just a few hours of the planet's rotation, how safe are we? And if another Tunguska were approaching now, out of the dark, do you think we'd notice in time? Tell me in the comments.